Hello, Warlords. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. Back with another faction review with our good friend Jed here. How's it going, Jed?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rodge.
You're over in the UK, but we're making it happen. You sent me my favorite kind of personal message recently, or email, which is, "Hey, I could do a faction review for you if you want." And yeah, those are my favorite messages you can possibly send me. So thank you for that. And shortly thereafter, I took you up on it. So yeah, this will be my first foray. I mean, Monty and I have talked about Hannibal stuff and Alexander stuff now, but we haven't done a faction review yet. So this will be the first one. Looking forward to it. Now, did you jump in with Carthaginians right away?
Yes, yeah. So my plan was to go for Carthage, and then, with all of the extra Gauls and Numidians, maybe branch out to some other armies as well. So I thought, yeah, it'd be a good place to start with the Carthaginians.
So that, yeah, I think we were talking before. That sounded very similar to my plan. I got to buy 50 Gauls to use 8 Gauls in my Hannibal warband, and oh, hey, I can do a Gaulish warband now. So that's funny. So have you kind of stuck with them the entire time, or kind of jumped around?
Yeah, so for Age of Hannibal, I've stuck with Carthaginians, sort of jumped in and out of sort of other ages. But no, for Age of Hannibal, yeah, stuck with the Carthaginians. I like them. They're good.
Awesome. Now, have you been to like a all ages event in the UK there?
Yeah,
Did you take Carthaginians?
Yeah, so Joe from the Northern Tempest podcast, he specifically ran a tournament to get lots of different ages.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to take Carthaginians for that, and he purposely matches up against people from other books. And yeah, I did okay until I came across some Scots who were pretty nasty. They're difficult to take down, whatever age you're using, I think. And then I've been lucky enough to use them in 2 or 3 just Age of Hannibal standalone events as well. So I think that's nice to be able to use just that age. So yeah,
Sure.
bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, I think just kind of looking at, I did play a couple games with Carthaginians. We didn't get a lot in. It's still something I'd like to do, but it is kind of interesting board, kind of a combined arms style.
Yep.
Maybe relying on activations rather than brute force. You got to have a little cunning. So in an all ages event, it could get pretty rough if everybody's going to just take the best stuff from each age. I don't know that the Carthaginians are necessarily in there. I think they're fun, and you can do some fun things. But in just a ancient setting, I think you'll probably fare a little bit better, if everybody's taking a little bit of everything there. So why don't we jump into the plethora of equipment options here? And
Yeah, I've got loads.
the special thing with Carthaginian, every faction has a little bit of extra complexity here in the ancient world. So their thing is the citizens versus contingents. So when you're recruiting your troops, and I guess I have a question for you. At what point are you designating these citizens versus contingents?
So it says in the blurb just before the force composition table, but you basically choose when you put them on the table. So, for example, you can split 1 point of warriors into 4 contingent and 4 citizens.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's just like any other equipment option almost. You choose when you deploy.
That's cool. Yeah. So if you're building your list for like an event or something, you're just going to indicate, 3 points of warriors. And then, like when you do with equipment, you can decide whether they're citizens or contingents when you deploy them.
Yeah, you can be sneaky and have, all of your mounted Numidians so your opponent can see them, and then quickly bring up the tray full of your foot warriors instead and put them down. So, yeah, you've got the option when you deploy.
So rules-wise, just straight up, there isn't a difference in the profiles or anything. I mean, it does change your options depending whether citizen or contingent. But when the battle board abilities come into play, if a unit is a contingent, it'll do one thing, or if it's a citizen, it'll do something different or something better. And just kind of roughly, it sounds like if you're a citizen, you're going to have more attack abilities or more attack buffs, and then if you're a contingent, you'll have more defensive buffs available to you, or stronger versions. And then you have the levies, which they're just levies. We like them, but they're not citizens or contingents. So I think some of the abilities might actually do nothing if we look at them, because they're neither. Okay, we got a lot of options here. So what have you gone through a lot of trial and error coming up with what you like, or did you?
Yeah, so when I first put them up, I was using 2 elephants and 4 points of warriors, and then dropping a point of warriors for some mercs, and then I got some levy painted and swapped them in. And now I think the first 5 points on my list are really an elephant, Sam Knights, levy sling, and then 2 points of warriors. And then generally a unit of half guard, just to get some extra attack punch. But no, the first 5 points that I've sort of settled on now are elephant, 2 warriors, Sam Knights, and levy.
Okay.
Tends to work well.
That's cool. Can you refresh me on the Sam Knight marks? What do they kind of do for you?
They're really good. So 8 warriors with javelins. They have determination. They can charge for free if the opponent has a fatigue. If they start the combat with less fatigue than their opponent, they get 3 bonus attack dice, I think, or defense, I think you can pick.
Right, yeah.
And they can add S to their move, which includes charge, and terrain doesn't slow them down.
All right.
So, they're pretty good.
There's a lot to be gained there. I like the sound of that. And we know mercs and the ancient age are very, very themey. So gotta like it. That kind of sounds pretty similar to what, I guess, in the few games I played, that's what I tried. I had a unit of mounted Hearthguard, an elephant. I still took a unit of levy, and then the rest were in warriors, jav warriors, some foot warriors. Interesting. Do you, so the levies aren't citizens or contingents, but you feel they bring enough to the table that you'll take them anyways after all this time?
Oh yeah, there's an ability on the board which makes them quite good. Obviously we'll get to that. Definitely worth taking, just to plink off those pesky mounted Hearthguard or mounted warriors. Yeah, they're definitely worth it in my opinion.
So maybe you said you take them with bows or the javelins?
Slings.
Slings. Okay. Yep. That sounds good. Have you ever taken the heavy chariot out for a spin?
No, I was going to say, with the Carthaginians, you can either pick heavy chariots or elephants. You can't pick both. And I started with elephants mainly because it takes me forever to paint, and painting an elephant is pretty quick. I started with the elephants.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, big scan. Yeah.
I do have a unit of chariots still waiting to be assembled. I think the main problem with them is that their bases are so big. It really makes them quite difficult to maneuver around a small table, especially when you can, have terrain fairly close to each other. And I think the size of the base is around an S stick wide, so they could be quite difficult to maneuver around.
Yeah.
So I've not used them yet. I think they'd probably be fun in an epic game where you've got a slightly bigger table. Mm-hmm. But I think the mounted Hearthguard can do a similar role without having to have chariots, and then you can also take elephants as well, which are pretty fun and pretty good.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. You'd probably either take the mounted Hearthguard or the heavy chariots. Probably not both.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely on my do list to try out. I think they look pretty good. Yeah, they certainly hit hard.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, you just got to keep them safe until you do that smacking. So, all right, we've got a lot of fun stuff to play around with here. Hopefully, we gave you an idea of where you could start and kind of what our units we have in mind when we're discussing the abilities. Let's move on to the battle board. So up top, we've got the usual business. Nothing. Well, actually, it isn't quite the usual business. So that I tell the truth. There's no difference stat-wise between a contingent and a citizen, but the citizens get to activate on any die, where the contingent is the kind of warrior die. So citizen warriors are in the Hearthguard spot, and contingents are in the warrior spot, and the mercenaries are there as well. So that's kind of cool, depending if you're taking levy mercs. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I had a look today, and unfortunately, you Carthaginians can't take any levy mercenaries, but yeah, if they could.
Oh, okay.
So they're all warriors anyway, or Hearthguard, the Greek hoplites. So.
And then the levies are in their usual spot. So, yeah, everything being even, you'd probably want your warriors to be citizens just for that flexibility. But I don't know. There's some good contingent stuff on here, man.
Yeah. I think the good thing about being able to activate warriors, citizen warriors on any dice, is again on some boards you can tell what your opponent's going to do, even just based on their basic activations. Whereas here, with any dice, you can activate any citizen, which keeps your options open if your opponent's got abilities which can, cancel activations, or they're not quite sure who you're going to attack with.
Yeah, so there are some reacts you could be up against in the ancient world for sure. And yeah, I love it. Having that flexibility, I think the more a veteran Saga player you are, the more you kind of salivate when you see that kind of thing where you don't have to commit to Hearthguard or Warriors necessarily. Any board that does that is a good one in my opinion. But let's jump down to that first ability there. Student of Xanthipus. That's how I'm going to say that. Orders are orders reaction. This is a common and uncommon. Till the end of the turn, all friendly units fighting in melee within medium of your warlord can modify the results of up to 2 dice by +1 each. If the unit is the attacker, these must be attack dice. Otherwise, they must be defense dice. Apply the bonus after you have rolled the dice. So you get to pick and choose what those 2 dice are. So you're probably going to have a couple 3s when you need a 4 to hit, a couple 4s to block when you need a 5, something like that. So it really probably is going to grant you 2 successes where you had failures before if you're rolling enough dice. So it does do more than what it might seem at first, but it's 2 dice. I don't know. Do you? I was never able to use this one.
No, on the face of it, it looks useful, but it all depends on. It sounds stupid, but what dice you roll. I find that you spend this ability, you need 5s to hit, and you end up rolling loads of 3s, and it's still no good to you because you can only make those 3s 4s. I think it's probably meant to work with another ability on the board, where you get bonuses for rolling 6s. But unless the unit you're fighting is already armor 6, do you really want to change a 5 to a 6? I don't know. I think it's situational, and it's quite expensive as well. I think there are better places for definitely the uncommon.
Unfortunately, two dice. I mean, the more activations you can do, the better it gets. But it's already kind of robbing you a little bit from those. Getting in that. I mean, if you could get in like 4 or 5 melees, This would probably be pretty good, but dang, trying to get 4 or 5 melees within medium of your warlord, that's not going to happen very often.
No, it's probably better in defense because you're not spending dice to attack anyone. If you can see, say, they've put their loads of activations on their board and they're going to charge you multiple times. Maybe you've got an objective. It's probably worth playing, and if you can close ranks, you then saving a couple of those on 3s. It's probably worth it then if you're going to be hit quite a lot. But otherwise, no, I don't really use it.
Yeah, I agree. Probably more usable in defense because you can set up your warlord, set up your units. Where on the attack, you're on the move, so now you got to move the warlord up, and you're kind of. It's tough to stay within medium, but ultimately, at 2 dice, this is just probably too pricey. I mean, even at 1 dice, you might not be using this one with everything else you have going on, unfortunately. Yeah. But well, let's move on to something a little better, hopefully. Delay. So activation reaction. Use any die you want to trigger this after enemy unit with at least 1 fatigue has been activated, but before the resolution of that activation. So if they're going to rest, it's before the rest. You cancel it. Yeah. And now here's the money down here. If you use an elephant, they cannot activate at all this turn. So that's good. We fought the pagan Rus for years, Jed. We know the power of biting cold. So having an ability like this is clutch. Is this the first place where the rare goes, or is there something even better?
This is probably the best ability on the board, and with a rare, with a rare, this is where my first rare goes. First turn, get an elephant. Yeah, it's on there. It's so demoralising for your opponent to know as soon as they get one of their units with a fatigue on, then potentially, if you roll well as a Carthaginian player, that is not activating for the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. It really is horrible. It's especially bad on warlords. A fatigued warlord.
Ooh, stay exhausted, my friend.
Yeah, they can't use a we obey. Exhausted units can't go after objectives, claim objectives. It's really nasty. Yeah, really
That's good. Is there a play for using it without the elephant?
It gets a bit trickier to use then because effectively you're just trading a dice. So if you've got dice advantage, or again, if you can see what they've put on their board, and for some reason they don't take into account the fact you can cancel one of their activations, so they want to rest a unit and then move them, and they've only put 1 activation on their board, and it's critical to the game, then you might just want to trade that 1 dice, knowing that they can't do anything for the turn. But generally, people can play around if you've only put a common or uncommon on there. But obviously, you can't play around a rare. If there's a rare on there, because you'll just stop for the rest of the turn.
Yeah, I agree. Without the rare, it's probably very, very limited. So the only time it'll probably come up is if you've got an opponent with warriors and Hearthguard or warriors and levy, and they're trying to attack with both on the same turn, but there's multiple activations required, so you can kind of force them to load up both with an extra activation to kind of power through the delay. So that is kind of the corner case there that I would see. But depending what you're up against, if it's just mostly warriors, no surprises. It's not going to do much, but just be a straight up trade, like you said. But yeah, good ability for sure. I think this definitely keeps him in the running for thinking about overall power level, because this is tasty.
The fact that they don't even lose the fatigue, so if they're resting, it's just they keep fatigue and you can't do anything.
That's the kick in the gonads that Hannibal. He's a genius. He influenced the board. I know it. All right. Sacred Band is the next one down. It's a melee. This is I think the Uncommon is the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponent must reroll 1 successful defense die, or 3 dice, if your unit is made up of citizens. So kind of the first demonstration of the citizen contingent thing. So if you are a contingent, you're going to spend the uncommon. They're going to reroll 1 die. It's not...
Levy can use it as well. But, citizens, it really shines.
Yeah, so I think it has to be citizens.
Yeah.
So... I actually like this one. I hate when opponents make defense die saves. So having them miss those makes me very, very happy. Disproportionately happy, maybe, to the power of the ability. So the elephant is a citizen, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
so this is where this ability shines.
So this one's pretty good with that elephant. We get the auto hits, and you definitely going to get another hit or two. So you're going to get a good bang for your buck on those auto hits.
Yeah. It's almost, you can almost go into a melee knowing that you're probably going to do 2 casualties if they can't close ranks, guaranteed, because you're auto hitting, and then they might save twice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're not going to hit all those rerolls. So and with the Carthaginian board, there's no way of gaining attack dice. So this is almost their next best way of almost gaining additional attack dice, is making the opponent re-roll defense dice.
Just maximize what they can do.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, with an elephant, definitely, because those auto hits means you're not even rolling a dice, and they're having to re-roll their defense dice. It's it's quite nasty.
So I always took an elephant for sure. This would work great with the heavy chariots. The Hearthguard mounted would be good. Do you take citizen warriors? And
I did take
almost
a unit of
specifically
10
for this
warriors.
ability.
Yeah, so every now and again I take sort of 2 smaller units of Numidian cavalry, drop a guy from each of those, so 2 units of 7, and then a big unit of 10 warriors. Mainly because you can't generate attack dice unless you use a combat bonus, so having a big unit is useful. And then knowing that with those citizens they're gonna have to re-roll 3 saves as well. It's pretty tasty.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. There's another ability later that you definitely like, that Numidian cav, always a keystone of Hannibal's strategies in the histories. But even like a big unit on foot, there's an ability, coordination, tenacity, having the ability to close ranks with defense dice. So for warriors, it kind of seems like it's pulling you towards contingents, but this would be the one that would be very nice on a unit of citizen warriors.
Definitely, yeah.
All right. Speaking of the Numidian cavalry, we say Numidian cavalry, meaning contingent warriors mounted with javelins. Encirclement, uncommon or rare. Activate 2 units for a move or a charge activation, up to 3 if they're all elephants and or mounted with horses. So this is a great way to get your Jav boys, your elephant, the mounted Hearthguard, your Warlord probably will be mounted. I don't know if he has to be. I can't remember.
Has to be, yeah.
So you got a lot of versatility with this one here. Probably, I don't know. I think I use it every turn of every game, unless I didn't roll a rare or a uncommon.
It's really good. I tend to use it to move 2 units of contingent warriors, so my Jav Cav and my elephant, and just looking at it for your contingent warriors. So you've got your basic abilities at the top, which require a common or a rare, and then you've also got encirclement, where you can activate your warriors, contingent warriors mounted with an uncommon. So you can effectively activate your contingent warriors with any dice as well, which is, again, really useful for the board. And obviously then you're going to get your javelin shots afterwards as well. So for 1 dice, you've got your move or charge. You can shoot. If you've got an elephant, you can shoot your composite bow afterwards as well.
Yeah, dude.
So, yeah, this is This is a really good ability.
You ever shoot and scoot with that elephant? Or is it move, shoot, charge? That's cool. You always get to shoot after you charge. I mean, you want to charge, but I'll just put a couple shots on you afterwards. That's not bad.
Yeah. So, slowly move up your elephant with this, and then I tend to move my Numidian cavalry up, and then spend a dice to bring them back if it looks like they're in trouble. So, spend one turn moving them up and shooting and bringing them back, then the next turn resting them, and then rinse and repeat.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's no like obvious ability that lets the Numidians really scamper off after they're shot, but with encirclement, you just get to, you get efficiency when doing that. So it's not as painful. It's not just 2 dice straight up to move and run away. It's activate a bunch of units and then use a dice later to get them out of there.
That's right. Yeah.
But okay. Yeah, also good for getting that levy moving. If you're gonna do the foot guys, you at least get a 2-for-1 when you're using the uncommon or rare. So I'm sure at some points that'll come up after the elephant's down, the horsemen are down. What do we have left? Send in the levies.
I use this with levy javelin when I started with the board, just because, again, it was a uncommon dice to move and activate, basically to move your javelin levy, and then obviously you get the shot afterwards, and you can also move an elephant at the same time, or another infantry unit. So but I moved away from the javelin levy for the sling levy for the next ability, really, that we're going to come to.
Okay.
But encirclement's really good.
Let's take a look at that. Eagle Eye, use any die you want. Gain 2 attack dice, 4 if it's a rare. This is a shooting ability. Your target cannot benefit from cover during the shooting attack. Love it. Love it. There's always that solid cover out there. And more often than not, there's some levy hunkered down in there. Not sure you want to be shooting at levy to begin with, but if you do, you can do it pretty efficiently here.
Yeah, I mean, we all know they take the rocky ground, you take the ruin, you're L apart, and your levies are just sat in the hard cover. With this, you can pop out, shoot them, they get no benefit from cover, and then there's another ability where in their turn, you can just bring your levy back into the hard cover.
Oh, nice.
So, it's pretty cheeky. But you also find that some people will put their, good units in cover as well, because they think, my half god are going to be extra difficult to kill in this hardcover. +1 to their armor and +1 to their save, and Eagle Eye basically takes away both of those buffs. So it's a really good ability.
Absolutely. Use it if there's. I was going to say, without cover, if they're just out in the open, do you still use this one just to add some more shots?
If I've got lots of common dice, it beats the combat bonus by 1 dice. You're getting 2 attacks instead of 1. And if you don't fancy over-activating your units, maybe you just want to get an extra shot in there. But I'll try and use it as much as I can with the enemy in cover, because it's for a common dice and taking away potentially +1 to their armor and +1 to their save. It's massive. It's really good.
Absolutely, yeah. Great ability. Loving it. And let's pop up to Blood Prize. So this one, every battle board with elephants needs a little something to help keep them alive, and Blood Prize is it for the Carthaginians. So this is an uncommon. It's a melee or shooting reaction, citizens only. So it works great for the elephant, can work well for your Hearthguard or your Warlord or some citizen warriors. Remove a figure from a friendly unit within medium to cancel a casualty suffered by your unit, or up to 2 figures, canceling a casualty each if you remove the figures from a contingent unit. So very, very cool ability here. So a couple things going on. There is a couple different ways to read it. So I guess Duke It has clarified it on the Discord. I asked them to. So the way that I think it should be played is you don't have to remove the casualty immediately. You wait and see if they cause a casualty, then you could do the swap, because you could read it that you have to sacrifice a guy immediately, and then they could whiff all their shots and you already sacrificed your guy. So that is how you play it. And
well, that's how I would push to play it, being the Carthaginian player.
Yeah, that is the way. I mean, you don't want to get logic involved into Saga rules discussions, but you would think there has to be a casualty before somebody dies. So I think that is the way to play it. So Duke It has clarified, I guess. I think we've been through a round of facts. I guess, I don't know. Are there any Carthaginian facts? Usually I check that, but I'm
none to the Carthaginian board.
Deficient. No. Yeah, I didn't check that this time. But yeah, so I believe that's the way it should be played. It's interesting with the contingent thing here, so you could block 2 hits, but you'd rather just use a levy maybe to block 1 hit if you can. Yeah. So do you use this one a lot? I mean, if you're taking an elephant, I think having it queued up can be handy.
I would say I don't use it a huge amount at the time. I think the uncommon is quite a sought-after dice, especially for Sacred Band and Encirclement. So it would maybe go on here if I felt my elephant was particularly threatened. But I tend to have a problem with taking off models to save another model.
That's right. It's a trade. You're spending a Saga die and you're just trading. You're not...
Yeah.
You'd rather just have 3 defense dice, maybe, when all said and done.
Well, that's it. Yeah, there's another ability on here where you can re-roll defense dice. So, yeah, unless I really have to, unless it was critical to keep, I don't know, my warlord alive, or if my elephant's doing a really good job and there's plenty of cavalry for it to get into, I would think of using it. But generally, I don't use this ability.
Okay. Well, it's there if you feel you need it. Yeah, it is kind of tough because the elephant's resilience 2, so he can block 2 casualties for every fatigue. So you'd rather just take the fatigue, and so you're really kind of saving this for the last one that would just kill him. But again, it can only save 1 or 2 guys. At that point, maybe you'd rather have the Numidian cavalry rather than the elephant. But okay, yeah, I feel like you have to do a lot of activating with the Carthaginians, and every die is precious, and so this is more like a contingent plan in case things go wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where you're kind of, I'm just going to plan everything goes right, and yeah, that's how I'll roll. Okay, let's pop down Combined Tactics. 2 common dice, melee ability. If a unit is composed of citizens, remove 1 of its fatigues. And if your unit is a contingent unit, inflict a fatigue on your opponent. So this one's pretty nice here. I guess 2 dice. Can you work it in?
Yeah, this is one of those where I do actually use it quite a lot. And I'm pleased that there's other abilities like Encirclement where I need to spend 1 dice to activate 3 units.
Kind of makes up for it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is really good for double activating your elephant into combat, and then getting rid of that fatigue. Also on your warlord or your mounted Hearthguard, they've essentially got a 2L threat range and going in fresh. And I also really like to use it with the Numidian cavalry. I've had quite a lot of luck taking out ball chariots with this ability because you can charge, give them a fatigue. They can't close ranks, so you're hitting them. I think their armor 4. So you're hitting the Gaulish Hearthguard on 3s. You've already given them a fatigue. You can either decide to bring their armor down or just leave it on there so they've got less resilience. And then this combined with delay as well. You can go in, give someone a fatigue, use the fatigue, they're going to end the combat with a fatigue anyway. So you can guarantee that delays ain't going to work if they want to activate the unit.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
interesting.
also with Sam Knights as well, they get buffs if the opponent has fatigue. So again, being able to put fatigue on a unit and then follow up with a Sam Knight charge where they get bonus dice. Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good ability.
Yeah, good points there. Yeah, I like that combining the delay with the Numidian cav, because you can charge in, do your stuff. Hopefully you'll have a couple abilities queued up to keep them alive. And then you do your damage, and then instead of having to scamper off, you can just use delay to kind of safely just hang out next to them, because that unit at least probably won't be able to counterattack. And depending on the direction you came in on, instead that might be perfectly safe, just kind of resting there for a turn. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, if you're on a flank and they're blocking line of sight and an enemy charge, you can just pick on one unit and make sure it does nothing for the rest of the game or until it dies, and then hit the next one.
Yeah, shoot it till it's dead and then move on. I like it. All right, we've got uncommon ability here, coordination, melee. If your unit is a citizen unit, each attack die that rolls a 6 or more inflicts 2 hits instead of 1. If your unit is contingent unit, each defense die rolls a 6 or more, cancels 2 instead of 1. So
that's your elephants are rare, so this one's pretty pricey as well.
Oh, it's a rare. Okay, sorry for the confusion. I don't know. What do you think about abilities that require a 6 to hit? I can never quite spend it. I can do it with the Vikings, with just barely, with 24 attacks. Is this?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of problems with this ability. One, it's pretty pricey. I think the intention that it's meant to be used with student Xanthithus,
yes.
where you can add 1 to a couple of your dice. But the problem is, again, it's only really good if you're, fighting someone who's got an armor of 6, because if it's any less than that, then you're going to be hitting them on less than a 6. So you might as well have 2 extra attacks from the combat bonus, because if it's 5 and 6 hits,
that's a good point.
So it only really comes into play when you've got a lot of attacks, and I think it really shines, when you've got 12 or more attacks. And the only way you're going to get that with a Carthaginian board is if you're using the heavy chariots, because their aggression is 6 on the charge. And if you've got 2 of them going in, then it's probably worth it then. But because it's so difficult to generate extra attack dice, and then you also have to roll 6s, it's it can be a bit difficult to justify using a rare and then whiffing your rolls and rolling no 6s.
Yeah.
So, from an attack point of view, it's difficult. And also with citizens, the first thing I looked for is, can I get javelin armed citizens? Extra +1 would be great for this ability. But the only way of doing that is with a legendary warlord, which
okay.
So from a citizen point of view, I don't think it's that good. But for contingents, it works quite well with tenacity, where contingents can then re-roll 4 failed defense dice. So you've got the more chance of rolling a 6. But ordinarily, no, I think this is a bit too pricey, and I think there's better places for the rare.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll talk about tenacity right after this, but it seems like it's meant to be used with Student of Xanthipus, but coordination is expensive by itself, and Student of Xanthipus is expensive by itself. So now you need a common, uncommon, a rare. That could be half of your Saga dice for 1 turn to try to pull this off, and it might not even happen because you don't roll the right numbers. So I don't know, if you had a 6-pack of Hearthguard, maybe this would be worth it. But heavy chariot, I don't know, even then with 12 attacks, you're still only going to probably statistically get it twice, so it's like 2 extra hits.
Yeah.
And you're right with that. Put the rare on a combat bonus. It's 2 more chances to get 2 extra hits. And you don't have to roll anything,
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately, I think the pricing is a little off on this one. Just the way, if Xanthippus was cheap, then having this one be pricey would make sense. But they're both kind of pricey, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Tenacity. So this one, gotta love it. Every turn, this one's loaded up. Melee shooting reaction. Reroll up to 2 defense dice. That do not cancel hits. And if you're a contingent, reroll up to 4. Perfect for keeping the Numidian cav alive. If you're taking some Gauls on foot, you're closing ranks. Pretty good. Makes spending a combat bonus for defense dice. I think you don't like using combat bonus too much, but if you can re-roll it, I mean, it's kind of, you're getting a double bang for your buck. So, yeah, is this every turn here?
Yeah, this is every turn. If unless I need the common to go on combined tactics, late in the game, it's difficult to pick between combined tactics or tenacity. But yeah, every turn if I can. It's again in the same way that Sacred Band makes people re-roll dice instead of giving you attack dice. Tenacity is not quite as good as getting defense dice.
Yeah, you'd rather
you re-roll as opposed to giving you extra dice, but it's almost as good. And for contingents, I mean, there's been so many times where, ordinarily javelin armed warriors on horses, they're pretty fragile. Armor 3/3. They're a bit of a soft spot. But with tenacity, you can. It's surprising how resilient they become. Rerolling those 4 dice has got me out of quite a lot of sticky situations. So yeah, definitely worth that common dice. Definitely.
Will you use it on citizens for just 2 dice?
I'll use it only really on my elephant. There's been times where you can see your opponent wants to shoot multiple times at your elephant. So if you can get those extra rerolls early on, then it's forcing them to spend more activations trying to kill your elephant. But I will try and use it on my contingents if possible.
Yeah. It's good. But I know it's again, you got to roll the right numbers. I've had some false confidence about, because sometimes in the one game that I play, sometimes you pick, like go in, take a bunch of hits, don't make anything. You're like, it's all right. I've got 4 rerolls, and then you roll those, and you also don't make anything. And you're like, oh, yeah. Darn it.
It's amazing how statistics don't work when you put these abilities on your board and play them.
Yeah, never count on it to make it through anything, unfortunately. But yeah, lovely ability, one of the better ones on the board. And we are coming towards the end here with redeployment. Common or rare orders reaction. Choose 1 unit and activate it for a move. Fortunately, it's got a max distance of short. You can move 2 units if you used a rare. So I like this one, having some kind of activation reaction. It's not activation reaction, so it's going to take place before your opponent does anything. So it's limited compared to how they usually imagine these working. But having something and then no restrictions on what you can do with it. It's not mounted units only. It's not limited to citizens or contingent. So you use this with the levy. And it's a common, so you can, at the very least, just move a unit, just farther up the board if that's what you need to do. But what kind of shenanigans, Jed, can you use with this? Are there shenanigans? Is it good enough to pull shenanigans?
There's one which is particularly convoluted, but is quite good.
I like convolution.
So I've been using it generally to spend a dice to shoot my levy, and then in their turn move my levy back.
Yeah, I think.
So that's really good. Activating levy on a common dice, and because it doesn't take place in your turn, they don't get a fatigue for an additional activation. And it's also really good for moving your elephants up the board, because they can move M on their first movement, but then any subsequent moves is a short anyway. So the fact that this is limited to a short doesn't really matter if you're using it on your elephant. And again, it lets you move your elephant without getting a fatigue, which is nice. And it's also good for just moving your Numidian cavalry, maybe 2 activations away from anyone they've shot at in the previous turn. So yeah, it's really good. Initially as well, I was using it to I was taking the mercenary unit, the I won't be able to pronounce them, the Thurai, the guys who can activate for free if an elephant or infantry unit activates within M. And technically, redeployment isn't activating the mercenary.
Okay, so there's something there.
I put the mercenary unit in front of my elephant and then move them up in my turn within charge range of the enemy, and then play redeployment on the elephant in their orders phase. And because an orders reaction can be played after they've rolled the dice, before they place dice on the board, they can sometimes have no abilities on their board. So you activate your elephant, which then automatically activates your mercenary unit, and you get them to charge in with javelins, and they've got an empty board because they've not placed their dice yet. So you can really catch some units off guard.
That is cheeky.
It is a bit cheeky, yeah.
But it does bring up a good point. There's 2 opportunities to use an orders reaction. One, I believe it's after they've rolled the dice, but before they put it down. And then the second is after they've put the dice down. So generally you would see what they've done, but save it for the very end. So for your case, it does matter because it's a charge and the cheekiness of that. So for most times, you are just doing a movement, so you won't be able to charge in any other situation before. But you could move them before they put any dice down. I can't think of any other situation besides what you've just described, but maybe to, I don't know. I guess if they do have orders abilities that to put fatigue down, I don't know. There's a lot of, if you're playing an Age of Melee, you probably could think of a situation, with Anglo-Danes exhausting a unit or something before you get a chance to move. So, very, very clever, Jed. You're sneaky guy. I'll say it now. Perfect Carthaginian generalmanship. I don't know if that's a word, generalship. Maybe that is. Maybe it's not. All right, so let's talk a little bit. We've gone through the battle boards. This is the first board we've looked at that gets an elephant. You said you take an elephant. How do you get? Can you just give us some tips on how you use the elephant, get the most out of it? What are you pointing it at when you? It's kind of slow. So when you set up, what are you sitting it across something? Is it always go in the middle?
Yeah. So I try and put it across from the enemy cavalry if I can.
Okay.
Just down to the fact that enemy cavalry are a -1 to hit you, and you cause 4 auto hits. So if you can get it opposite some cavalry, and maybe they've deployed and they've boxed themselves in a little bit, try and get up and hit their cavalry. I also think the elephants have a little bit of a fear factor. I don't think anyone really likes facing one, despite the fact that they're not particularly difficult to kill.
Yeah, they go down.
Carthaginian board does suit them. With combined tactics, being able to take off that fatigue in melee is, you're saving yourself from 2 unsaved hits there. Mm-hmm. So board really does suit them, and being able to move in their turn as well with redeployment is really good. So you'll find that you don't really want to overactivate them because you don't want that fatigue sitting there. But you can move them in your turn and their turn. You'll find that you get across the board fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And Yeah, I think it's just about if you can hit cavalry, that's the perfect situation.
So will
But
you do like you say, you set them up against cavalry. So it basically kind of leaves a big space because they're not going to leave their cav within a medium and a short of the elephant because they'll be able to be charged. So it clears a big zone. So that means the double, or I guess kind of triple activation threat range is medium, short, short. And I think folks probably would leave them in. Will you do move, charge to get the 4 auto hits, the -1? Is that worth it?
Maybe against cavalry, maybe
Against cav, yeah. Because that's probably the only way a KG general is going to let you get in. But you might be winning anyways if they're not letting you that close.
You're going with 2 fatigue. You can get rid of one of them, but then you're going to be ending the combat with at least 2 fatigue again, which is a little bit dicey for an elephant. Obviously, if you're going in against maybe a 6-man half-guard unit, you're going to be trading up. So even if your elephant dies, if you take out those 6 half-guard, especially if you've got Sacred Band, you've got 4 auto hits.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they've got abilities on their board which buffs their saves.
Probably might come down if it's mounted Hearthguard, if it's a big unit. The other thing too, I mean, if fatigue, if they're exhausted, you can just go in, no problem, because you won't have to. They can't hit you then. So at least that part of the equation is solved. You don't have to load up defense abilities to stay alive. You just got to get there.
They're also particularly good at holding objectives, purely down to the fact that in order for someone to take an objective off you, they've got to win the combat. And because an elephant's got resilience, they've either got to kill you outright or they're not going to beat you in combat.
Yeah, it's kind of like we know warlords are very, very good at holding objectives. Maybe monsters if you play Age of Magic, or another one too. So it could be handy there. Cool. So are you... So with the Carthaginians, so it's kind of a combined arm style. I think you definitely need some shooting with the 4s because I think you're going to have trouble trying to muscle purely through melees. So this is kind of, in my opinion, let's see if you agree, kind of more like a veteran Saga player's board where we talked about there's kind of some trap abilities that aren't worth their cost that a newbie might not be able to pick out. But a lot of it is, activation efficiency, redeployment, embellishment, kind of getting your troops in the right place and, kind of winning a long game of playing with fatigues and stuff like that. Is that kind of how you win or no? Would you phrase it differently?
They're more of a death by 1,000 cuts rather than one big...
Just a big punch, there's nothing...
Yeah. I find the more I play them, the more they're a shooting faction, really. And then you can follow up with your elephant in combat when your enemy's a bit depleted. With things like encirclement, like you said, you've got the efficiency of being able to move multiple units, and then with the free javelin shot as well, you're effectively getting with say an elephant and 2 units of javelin cavalry. With 1 dice, you're getting 3 moves and then 3 shots if your elephant's in range with his composite bow and your 2 Numidians are in range with their javelins. So 1 dice, you're getting 3 shooting activations, and the moves as well. Then Eagle Eye to buff that shooting. And then with my Sam Knights that I tend to run, their determination, so free to activate them for a move, and then hopefully a free shot as well. And then with the Sling Levy, again, generally I use my Warlord to activate them to shoot. So again, I can use dice for things like combined tactics, the more pricey abilities maybe where you need multiple dice. And then maybe a couple of dice to bring back your Numidian cavalry, just so they're not going to get charged or shot in the opponent's turn. So it's a lot of moving your units up, bringing them back after a shot, and hopefully by turn 3 and 4 you've done enough damage. Maybe you've whittled down a couple of Saga dice. Maybe your Numidian cavalry have charged some units that can't close ranks. They're quite a glass hammer unit. Maybe you can get rid of some mounted warriors or mounted half guard with your jav cap, and then go for the kill with the elephant, who's fresh and double activate and get those autos.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Death by 1,000 cuts. Kind of play it defensive at first. If they want to come in and approach, they're going to have to deal with the fresh elephant. Nobody wants to go up against that. Good deal. So we'll maybe just limit to sticking within Age of Hannibal. Is there some factions you have trouble with, and some are easier?
I find Iberians difficult, mainly because you've got so many decisions to make, and also with the fact that a lot of my units are either javelin or composite bow armed, so it gives the Iberians a chance to use their guerrilla before I
scoot out of there.
Yeah. I also find Romans difficult. I think when you first look at the warband, they're an infantry warband, and you think, they're pretty slow. And I think the Carthaginians really shine when they can outmaneuver their opponents. Again, you can activate your units easily, and you've got lots of mounted options. But those Romans, with Quincooks and some of their abilities, they can really come out and get you. They
have a lot of small units, so they're covering a lot of the table in their warriors. So, they have one shooting defense ability, but it's pretty good. But the rest are just kind of warriors. So we know that it can be just tough to kind of whittle those down. And when they're whittled, they're maybe even stronger than when they were before they were whittled. Harder to kill.
Yeah, but they're also a bit of a pain because they can get rid of your attack dice with some abilities. I think Gladius, they can make you lose 3 attack dice.
Again, hate that one.
But where you can't generate attack dice, they're quite difficult. I think they're the main two, which are tricky.
Okay.
I personally have a problem with Romans. I've not quite found the key to
the
beat them.
Sauce. Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, all right. You have fun playing Carthaginians? You must. If you
I mean, I enjoy the history as well. I think they're pretty unique, and reading about them is pretty fun. I think Stuart Tomahawk did a good job of representing the different types of troops that they have with this citizen and contingent mechanic. And there are lots of things I haven't tried either with them. I mean, at the last event at BritCon in the UK, where we had an Age of Hannibal day, and there were three Carthaginian players, and our lists are all very different. It just goes to show, there's probably a combination of units no one's tried yet, which is can work really well. I ran 1 elephant, Austin ran 2 elephants, and Chris ran 3 elephants.
Holy smokes!
Depending on how many elephants you want to run, you've got the ability there.
Run up to 3. Okay, love it. All right. Well, let's see here.
I would say as well with the Carthaginians, they've probably got, I think with them and the Romans and maybe the Greeks as well, they've got the most mercenary options as well. There's lots of different units available to them.
Always had some deep pockets, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So there's you can put down a completely different Carthaginian warband every time you play, and if you've got a regular opponent, it could be a long time before they get bored with what units you can put down. So, they're really good fun.
A lot of options to play with. And, it sounds like it's kept you interested since the book's come out, if you're still playing them. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and giving us your knowledge. Thanks for reaching out to me. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being a patron on Patreon. Jed is on this giant list of names here, so thank you. very much for that. I'll also thank Terry, Patrick, Sean, Mitchell, Kevin, and Scott for helping making these videos happen. I really like doing them, and chatting with folks is the best part of the job. I wouldn't call it a job, but it's a term you can use for sure. And all right, I'm curious if any other folks have played against or with the Carthaginians, and if you have any secret nuggets of knowledge you're willing to drop, or if you disagree about anything that we've said. That's the fastest way to get a comment, Jed, is to say something false, and people will chime in immediately. I don't think we had anything too saucy that people will jump on, but yeah, I'd be curious to hear other people's experiences. There's a lot of unit choices, and especially when you factor in those mercs, like you're saying, there's a lot of shenanigans that can get afoot here. So yeah, that is going to be it for us this time. Thanks again, Jed. We'll catch you on the next one. Hopefully we'll see you again someday, man.
Yep. Be good.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon, or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.